Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video. If a missile can travel faster than light, then it can blow up a target even before being launched. I am not joking. Here's what I mean. Say we want to blow up an alien base on an alien moon very, very far away. Why? Because we're going to discover something fascinating. So we use a very advanced hypersonic missile, but for now this missile is traveling slower than the speed of light, normal stuff. So it's going to take a few years to go and blow up its target, right? But if there are some observers nearby witnessing this event and they're moving very close to the speed of light, they would disagree on how long it took for the missile to go and blow up the target. Some would say that, no, it only took a few days. Versus others would say that, it took a few decades for it to happen. And that is fine because this is relativity. The time between events is relative. It depends on reference frames. But you know what's not relative? The order of events over here. Everyone would agree that the missile was launched first and then the target was blown up because the cause comes before the effect. Kind of makes sense, right? Unless the missile is traveling faster than light. If this missile is traveling faster than light, then there will be some observers who find that the target got blown up even before the missile was launched. And this is not just an illusion that is caused because light takes time to reach people's eyes. No. As we will see in this video, it will be their reality. When things are traveling faster than light, some observers will find that the effect happens before the cause. Causality gets broken. But wait a second, why does it happen? Why faster than light signals break causality? And even if they did, what's the big deal? Well, we can try to understand these things using space-time diagrams or Lorentz equations, but our goal over here is not just to understand. No. The hope of this video is to try and rediscover these ideas step by step using intuition. So, if you're ready for this, let's begin. The biggest challenge to doing relativity intuitively that I have found is that what you see is not what really happens. Here's what I mean. In our everyday life, the distances we're dealing with are so small, the speeds are so small compared to the speed of light that we can pretty much ignore the time it takes for light to reach our eyes. We can say that light travels almost instantly. And therefore, what we see is what's really happening. But that's not the case when things are very far away or when things are traveling very close to the speed of light. What you see can be very different from what really happened. Say the distance between the destroyer and this moon is about 1 light year, meaning light takes about 1 year to go from here to here. We've also placed a curious astronaut very close to moon because we want to understand what she sees. And don't worry about her. She has high-tech spacesuit, so she will be protected from the explosions. Don't worry. And also to keep things simple, let's fire a missile that's pretty much traveling at the speed of light. Our calculations will be very easy. We can do it in our head. So if you fire a missile that's traveling at the speed of light, it's going to take 1 year to go from here to here. So it'll take 1 year to hit the target and cause an explosion. So 1 year later, it'll cause a boom. That means the time difference between the cause and the effect is 1 year. But the big question is, what would she see? Will she see the same thing what we saw in our animation? No. Because when we launched the missile at this point, she's not going to see it because the light from here hasn't reached her eyes. In fact, if we keep track of a light signal, we'll realize this light signal and this missile will travel together because the missile is also traveling at the speed of light. So what will she see? Well, let's find out. So since the whole thing travels together, when this light reaches her eyes, the explosion happens. That means she will see the explosion and this missile being launched at the same time. Now, of course, we could ask that, hey, shouldn't light from the explosion also reach her eye? Yeah, but because we have placed her very close to the moon, we can ignore that. And that's the reason why we placed her very close to the moon, okay? So anyways, she will see both the missile being launched and the explosion at exactly the same time. But notice, they didn't really happen at the same time. Right in front of your eyes, Einstein says, an example where you see something is not the same. What you see is not the same as what really happened. But now Einstein asks, can she figure out, based on what she saw, can she figure out what really happened? And I'm like, yeah, she can because she understands basic physics. You see, you can say that, hey, the explosion, the boom happened right now. And although she received this image also right now, this image has been traveling, this light has been traveling for a year because it came from 1 light year away. Therefore, this light was created 1 year ago, and therefore the missile was launched 1 year ago, and therefore she can perfectly understand that the missile was launched 1 year, after which the boom happened. Everything makes sense. Also notice, which is going to be super important for us later on, because this light has been traveling for 1 year, the radius of this is also going to be 1 light year. So just by knowing the radius of the light signal, we can figure out how long that light signal has been traveling. And lastly, let's imagine if we didn't know this number, we didn't know how far this was. Then to figure out how long it has been, what we can do is we can imagine running the whole animation backwards and then figure out how long it takes to collapse, how long this takes for the signal to collapse. That will tell how long ago this light signal was created, and that's another way in which we can figure out how long ago the missile was launched. We're all prepping. This is just a prep for what's going to come. Makes sense, right? All right, let's launch this missile one more time, but this time we're gonna have another observer. What if there is a very fast-moving spaceship at the same location? Okay, so when the explosion happens, there just happens to be another fast-moving spaceship moving to the right, pretty much at the same location. You can imagine it's the same location as where the astronaut is. I've just shown it over here so that we can see it, but it's at the same location as where the astronaut is. Okay, Einstein asks, what will the people inside the spaceship see right now? What do you think? Well, because they're at the same location as the astronaut, they would get the same light as the astronaut is getting. Therefore, they would also see the boom and the missile being launched at the same time. Look, you can see that over here, just like what the astronaut got. But now here's the key question that Einstein asks us, okay? Both will agree that the boom happened right now because this is happening right now. But from the astronaut's perspective, she says that, hey, this missile was fired 1 year ago. Now, the big question Einstein asks is, what about the people over here? What would they conclude? When was the missile fired from their perspective? And my first reaction is, well, it has to be the same, right? Like all the calculations will be the same, right? But Einstein says no. From their perspective, they will find that the missile was fired just a few months ago. And I'm like, wait a second, what? Why, Einstein? Why would these people conclude that the missile was fired just a few months ago? How does that make any sense? And Einstein says, Mahesh, I wish I could give you a simulation to show you what's really happening, what I'm thinking in my head. Unfortunately, I can't do that. But yes, where we can do it, we can do it on Brilliant.org, the sponsor of this video. Okay, seriously, why do I recommend Brilliant all the time? Because unlike watching videos, Brilliant has interactive lessons in math, science, data, programming, and even AI. I've been recommending them to my students for years because it's really hands-on and that makes learning really effective. Also, guess what? Their lessons are bite-sized, which you can cover in about 15 to 20 minutes. This means with just a few minutes every single day, you can actually enhance your problem-solving skills. I mean, how cool is that? For example, have you wondered how ChatGPT really works? Well, then you can try their course on large language models, LLMs. Again, right off the bat, you will start interacting with it and you will uncover how these models build vocabulary, what training really means, and how can you even tune them to generate different outputs based on different contexts. So if you think all of this is awesome, then guess what? You can try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days by going to www.brilliant.org/FloatHeadPhysics. The link is also in the description, and you'll also get a 20% off on the annual premium subscription. You'll probably develop a daily learning habit and also end up supporting my channel, which is awesome, right? So do check them out. Now, back to the video. Again, why would the people over here conclude that the missile was fired just a few months ago, Einstein? What's going on over here? I mean, the light has been traveling for 1 year, right? So why would they conclude that? Well, Einstein says, Mahesh, this light has not been traveling for 1 year from their perspective. And I'm like, wait a second, how does that make any sense? What are you saying? Okay, so from their perspective, they're at rest, and the rest of the universe is moving to the left, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah. Now remember, when things are moving very close to the speed of light, they contract in the direction of the motion. Now the same thing should have happened over here, and the spaceship should have also been contracted, but Mahesh, you forgot to animate that, and I'm Very sorry to do that. Yes, this spaceship should have been contracted. But anyways, from the spaceship's perspective, everything gets contracted, which means, notice, that destroyer is not 1 light year away from the explosion or from the moon. So from the perspective of the people over here, the light came from here, right? No, says Einstein. There's a second thing that we need to take care of. Remember, these things are moving to the left. They're moving away from the spaceship. And this is the current location of the destroyer. But when that light was emitted back in the past, the destroyer must have been closer. Therefore, the light must have been emitted from somewhere over here. And if you calculate this distance, that happens to be a few months, say about 3 months. Don't worry too much about the numbers over here. It's not very accurate animation. What matters is that this distance is much smaller than a light year, and therefore, let's just assume it to be a few months, say 3 months. So these people will conclude that this signal was sent 3 months ago, and therefore they will conclude that the missile was fired 3 months ago. What's interesting over here is that both these people are exactly seeing the same things, but their conclusion is very different. Their realities are very different. So if you were to look at things from their perspective, they would say that, first of all, the light signal wouldn't look like this. From their perspective, the light signal must only have a radius of 3 light months. And if you were to run the simulation back in time, it will look somewhat like this now. Here it goes. Boom. This is what happened when we go back in time. So if you go forward in time, it now makes sense as to why it only took 3 months to explode. Because look, first of all, the distances are very small with length contraction, and the moon is traveling to the left. Therefore, it only takes a few months for the explosion to happen. So notice, different people will disagree how long it took for the explosion to happen, the time between the cause and effect. But notice that they agree that the cause happened before the effect. In fact, everyone over here, regardless of how fast they're moving, whichever observer you consider, everyone over here will agree that the cause happened before the effect. The missile was launched before the explosion happened. Everything is fine, causality is fine. But now, let's consider what happens when missiles are traveling faster than light. This time we have a missile that's traveling 4 times the speed of light, which means when it goes from here to here, it'll take not 1 year, but only 1/4 of the year, meaning just 3 months. Boom! So the difference between the cause and the effect is just 3 months, okay? Time difference, I mean. But again, Einstein asks, Mahesh, what does she see this time? Ooh, interesting. The missile is traveling very quickly. That means if you were to see the light signal, let's look at it one more time. There we go. Whoa! She sees the boom first, of course, because the light from here is yet to reach her. So she sees the boom first, and then after some time, she will see the missile being launched. Oh my God. I'm like, wait a second. She's seeing things in reverse. She is seeing the explosion first, and maybe she'll also see the missile being here later, and then the missile being here, and then the missile being here. Oh my God, she sees the whole thing uncovering backwards. Wow, it would be so fascinating. So this is it, right? So causality is broken. She's seeing the effect before the cause. Is this what you were talking about, Einstein? And Einstein says, Mahesh, no, this is what she sees. Remember, we need to figure out what happens from her perspective to understand whether causality is broken or not. So don't jump the gun yet. I'm like, okay, cool. All right, let's do that. How do we figure this out? Well, again, from her perspective, the boom happened right now. How long will she have to wait for this light signal to reach her? Well, 3 months have passed because it took 3 months. So in that 3 months, the light must have traveled 3 light months. The light still needs to travel the rest of the year, which is 9 more light months, which means the light will take another 9 months to reach her. So let's look at that. This is another 9 months. There it goes. Here it goes. And yeah, 9 months later, she will receive this signal. But wait a second. The astronaut knows. She knows that this signal was originated 1 year ago. So it was originated 1 year ago, but she got it 9 months after the boom. That means it was created 3 months before the boom. So she will realize that even though she saw the whole thing in backwards, and it was a fascinating thing for her to witness, one in a lifetime opportunity to do all of this, all of that is great. But she will realize that even though she saw it that way, that was an illusion. What really happened is that the missile was fired 3 months before the boom happened, explosion happened. So causality is not broken. The cause comes before the effect. Everything is fine. Okay. Then Einstein, why did you say that the causality gets broken? Clearly, we are seeing the causality is not broken. Einstein says, Mahesh, but what if when this boom happened, there happened to be a spaceship nearby? Again, moving very close to the speed of light to the right. What will things look like from their perspective, and what would they conclude? This is the key moment. Okay, let's uncover this. First of all, just now boom has happened. Just now the explosion has happened, and the spaceship is very close, or right over there at where the astronaut was. So even the person over here would see the boom right now. Okay, when will they see the missile being launched? Well, for that, the light from here has to reach over here, and that will take some time. Let's see. So this is a reference to show when the boom happened. And now we have to wait. Oh my God, we're going to have to wait a long time because this is traveling very close to the speed of light. Again, this should have been length contracted. I did not animate it right. Sorry for that again. But anyways, let's wait for it. Here it goes. Here it goes. Here it goes. Here it goes. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. There it goes. And whew, okay, there it is. They finally see the missile being launched. So they too see the things in reverse. They first saw the explosion, and then after a long time, they saw the missile being launched, right? And again, Einstein says, Mahesh, be very careful. This whole thing is from our perspective. From our perspective, the light went from here to here. It traveled great distances. But what does it all mean from their perspective? What would they conclude? When was this light signal originated? When did this boom happen? What would they now conclude? That is the big question. This is the key moment. This is the climax, folks. How do we figure this out? We have done this before. We just transform into their reference frame and take care of two things. So when we jump into their reference frame, the first thing we do is we length contract the rest of the universe. So when we do that, let's do that. There we go. All right. So the destroyer is a little closer. Does that mean from their perspective, the light comes from here? No. Remember, the whole thing, the whole universe is moving to the left. And so this is the current location of the destroyer. But when the light was emitted, when the missile was launched, when the light was emitted from the destroyer, it was closer, which means, again, it was somewhere over here. So the people over here will conclude that this light came from here. It has been traveling from here to here. So that's when that happened. So to figure out exactly when it happened, we have to go back in time and see when the light converges over here. And when did the boom happen? Oh, can you see something? Can you actually see something? The boom happened when the plane was over here. So let's now turn back the time and see what it all means from the plane's perspective. Let's do that. Here we go. This is what it looks like from the plane's perspective. Let's turn back, and we don't really care about exact time. What we care about is when does the cause happen, when does the missile get fired, and when does the boom happen? Which happens first? That's what we're interested in. So let's look at it. Let's go back in time. Let's do the whole thing in time. They'll be coming closer, and when this thing converges, that's when the missile was fired, and here it is. This is the moment when the missile was fired. But what's interesting is that the boom is yet to happen in the past. It's further in the past. Oh, can you see what's going on? It'll make sense. Let's just roll with it. Let's do the animation. We're going back in time. Let's run it back in time. We say that, okay, now I have to further wait and go back in time to figure out exactly when the boom happened. This is when the boom happened. So look, the boom happened even more in the past, which means the boom happened first, then the missile got launched from their perspective. They would conclude that it happened the other way around. Again, if we run the whole thing forward, it'll make sense. Let's run it forward. Okay, here we go. Here we go. So first the explosion happens. They also instantly see the explosion. And then after some time, now the missile gets launched. And then the light signal of that missile being launched gets created. And then we'll have to wait a long time for that light to eventually reach them. So look, the explosion actually happened first before the missile being launched. This is what their reality is. But wait a second, how does that make any sense? What does it all mean? Well, not only is this event of explosion happening before the missile being launched, they will find that after the explosion happens, after that, the missile comes here. Then the missile comes here. All the events over here are actually happening in reverse. They're not just seeing it, but it's actually happening in reverse from their perspective. So if you look at the whole thing one more time, this is their reality, boom, and then the whole missile, in fact, travels backwards. This is their reality. So again, just to clarify, the astronaut too saw things backwards. But when she did the physics, she realized, no, things actually happened forward. The missile was launched first, and then the explosion happened. The people in the spaceship also saw the things backward, but they didn't. When they did the physics, they realized that it actually happened backwards. The explosion did first happen for them first, and then the missile was launched. The whole thing actually happened backwards. Causality got broken. Okay, so this can have many questions now. We might have many questions. First of all, what's the problem if the causality is broken, Einstein? I ask. Well, even if it's broken, even if they conclude that the explosion happened first and then the missile got fired, so what? It's all happened already. They can't influence anything anymore, right? Einstein says, well, what if we rerun the experiment? I mean, think about it. If we were to redo this experiment, and now we know all the experimental parameters, if we rerun the experiment, the explosion happens first, and they will instantly see that explosion because they're at that location, so they don't have to wait for the light to reach them. They're really there. So they'll instantly see the explosion. They'll know the explosion happened. And what they can do now is they can now send a faster than light signal to the destroyer and say that, hey, don't fire any missile. And now what will happen if the people in destroyer agree to that and they do not launch a missile? What happens now? The explosion has already happened, but there is no missile being launched. How do you make sense of this? How does it all make sense from the perspective of the astronaut, meaning you and I, and from our perspective? How does it all make sense? The universe gets broken, paradoxes get created. This is why, for the universe to be sane, causality should not be broken, which means every single observer, regardless of how fast they're traveling, should agree in their frame the cause should come before the effect. And since faster than light signals break causality, this is an argument against faster than light signals. This is how we can conclude that faster than light signals cannot exist. So things like tachyons should not exist. But that now brings us to the one last question. An important question that we could be having over here is that, we can tell Einstein, hey, you know what, in this specific example, that kind of made sense. But in general, if we were to zoom out a little bit, what's really going on? Why is it that if signals are traveling slower than the speed of light, everybody agrees on causality, it gets maintained, but the moment signal passes that threshold, goes faster than the speed of light, now suddenly some observers will pop up and in their reference frame, causality gets broken. Why does the universe conspire that way? Like, why does it all happen? I still don't get it. I'm not able to put it all together. What's going on over here, Einstein? Come on. It's time to put everything into perspective and reap the benefits of our hard work. Are you ready? Again, if you use a slower than light missile, then light overtakes it, of course. Now notice the cause signal is completely encompassing the effect signal, right? Now, if I transform it to some other reference frame, this was the reference frame from the astronaut, our reference frame. We're all at rest. Now, if you jump into some other reference frame, a moving frame, these distances will change, okay? But whatever you do, this yellow signal, the effect signal, should be on the left side of the cause signal over here. Similarly, the effect signal over here must be on the right side of the cause over here. The relative position should get maintained, because transformations, when you do a transformation, you're only dividing or multiplying by something. When you divide or multiply by something, this thing will shrink, or this distance will become bigger, but this can never come out. This can never come out, right? That means the restriction over here is that whatever transformation you do, this signal has to be inside this signal. In other words, in any reference frame, they will find that the cause has been traveling for a longer time compared to the effect. The cause came before the effect. Even if you consider extreme cases, the cause comes before the effect. The same thing would happen even if the signals were traveling at the speed of light. Now consider the missile was traveling at the speed of light. Something very similar happens, and over here, the two signals are touching each other. Now when you do any transformation, these distances can change, but again, the distance over here between these two signals is 0. 0 divided by anything is 0, 0 multiplied by anything is 0. So when you do any transformation from one reference frame to another, you should find this should always stay 0, and these distances can change, but again, this means that this signal should stay inside the cause signal touching over here. So in different reference frames, you will again find that this signal is smaller, meaning the cause has been traveling for a longer time compared to the effect. And that's why the cause happened before the effect, maintaining causality. But what happens when the missile can travel faster than the speed of light? When signals travel faster, now we find that the effect signal has come out of the cause signal. It has broken free from the shackles of the cause signal. And now when you do a transformation, no longer there is a restriction that this has to be inside the cause signal. Therefore, now anything can happen, all bets are off, and therefore now we will find in some reference frames, weird things happen. In some reference frames, for example, these two signals can have exactly the same size, meaning these two signals have been traveling for exactly the same time. They would conclude that these two signals happened simultaneously, which means in this reference frame, they would conclude that the missile traveled at infinite speed. The cause and the effect happen simultaneously. It's possible because the effect signal has come out of the cause signal. And of course, in some other reference frames, it's possible that the cause signal is smaller than the effect signal, meaning the effect signal has been traveling for a longer time. It was the one that happened first. The effect can happen before the cause. So why is it that when things are traveling faster than the speed of light from the cause to effect, the causality gets broken? Because it allows the effect signal to come out of the cause signal. That's the key reason. As long as things are traveling slower than the speed of light, the cause signal completely encompasses the effect signal and causality stays conserved. Beautiful, isn't it? So, did this video give you an intuitive approach as to why FTL breaks causality? If it did, that's the goal of this entire channel, to rediscover concepts intuitively. So if you're new over here, do consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.